welcome to A Conversation with Wei Chen. I'm your host, Aiden Yargal with Greater Film Festival. Greater Film Festival is an organization working towards amplifying stories for the greater good. And this is also in partnership with Networking for Career Filmmakers, a Facebook group dedicated to connecting professionals in film and TV around the world. Just to start the conversation, Wei, how are you doing right now? How is everything? How are you staying sane?
Oh, great. Thank you, Aiden. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Things are going well, considering we're in this pandemic. But as far as work and personal life goes, I think we're, at least for me, I'm making the best of the situation. I think I'm grateful that I have a job and I could work from home. I know that's not the case for a lot of people out there. So, but it's still, still trying to be as inspiring to people and uplifting, but also at the same time, you know, just watching out what's happening in the world and hopefully making a difference somehow. So it's kind of a crazy time right now.
I could not agree more. I honestly couldn't. And before we jump into just starting this conversation, I want to let everybody know who you are and what you've done and why you're here in this seat today. So Wei is the program manager for Rideback TV Incubator. Prior to joining Rideback, Wei worked in development at ABC Family, now known as Freeform, and CBS. He also consulted on writing programs at NBC and Universal. Born in Taiwan, Wei grew up in San Francisco and moved to Los Angeles to attend UCLA, graduating with a degree in economics. So that's our bio of Wei. This is who Wei is right here. And so Wei, let's just kind of jump right into it. Can you please tell me a little bit about your origin story and how you found yourself in television development?
Yeah, so I was immigrant born in Taiwan, came when I was 7 years old. Grew up in San Francisco. Like every, I think, immigrant, you're supposed to be studious. You're not supposed to rock the boat. I'm sure a lot of the Asians out there would relate. You're supposed to be a doctor, engineer, or lawyer, one of the three, finding a stable job. But creativity was always something I had a passion for. It was just never discouraged, but it was never encouraged as well. And it wasn't until I got to UCLA and I was studying biochemistry and I just hated my life. I hated the way I had to study and there was no creativity, obviously. And it wasn't until I think one day, I'm in Los Angeles. It's Hollywood, and it just dawned on me that hey, maybe there is a career in being creative. I didn't know how to go about to do that, so the only thing I knew or heard of was if you don't know anything about the industry, go work at an talent agency. So I graduated with a fairly good GPA. I was making decent money at a kidney transplant laboratory, and I gave that all away to intern at Miramax, making no money. I was the oldest intern, but building those relationships helped me get to be an assistant at Endeavor, which is William Morris Endeavor now. And it wasn't until I was at a talent agency that I kind of grew to understand the differences, film, television, reality TV, talent, and just growing up watching television, right? Learning English, that's how I learned English. I just had an affinity for it. So from there, I went to ABC Family Programming, not knowing anything about development. I didn't know how to give notes. I didn't even know how to read a script. But it was finding the right people to work for that were invested in me and gave me the encouragement and were patient in teaching me and letting me absorb from them. And then from there, I went to CBS Drama Development, and that's where the most of my training came from. At the time, CBS was, I think, the number one network in the mountain of materials. We developed so much at CBS because it's a broadcast network. There's just more programming that comes with the broadcast system, and it was just a great training with not just the volume, but also the amount of creativity that goes around. And I think I got most of my experience from there. And then from there, uh, with the streaming and cable starting to making more of a impact, I went to ABC Signature Studios to start developing for cable and streamers. And that was still coming about. Netflix was not the Netflix it is now at the time. So that was it was extremely challenging. It was extremely challenging. And then as things progressed, and then I started be interested in the global landscape. So while I consulted at Writers on the Verge for NBC, writers program like Writers on the Verge NBC and Universal, I was developing for the China audience and was thinking more of a global audience uh, as I think this is where our industry is going, more of a global industry. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I think that that's where I kind of started, and then of course this opportunity afforded itself at Rideback. It was just because I've been in development and I've worked at writers programs. This incubator which was is very unique because it pays mid-level writers to be creators. It was just an opportunity I could not pass up because it champions diverse voices to be creators, which there's not a lot of. So, which is a passion of mine. So, I've been at Ryback for almost 2 years, a little under 2 years now, and it's been a wonderful experience. It's been a wonderful ride. So,
That answers my question perfectly. It actually kind of leads me to some other questions I have, but speaking towards going into that international market, because I agree with you. I think, just with one, globalization, and two, the internet, right? And how easy it is to stream anything across the world. Of course, that makes sense that that's where television consumption is going to go, that we're watching things from other countries. So I guess my question is like, are you a superhero? Because you've done a lot. You've produced 2 international films in 2017, plus developed the first season of a television series, Thanks for Having Loved Me, in 2007. And you did all of this while being an executive assistant at major networks and rising through the ranks. How did you find the time or find an ability to do all of that?
um, I don't know if I produce those, but I think that it is. I think part of being in this industry is just having a hunger for producing and finding creative projects that you're passionate about. Right? Everybody talks about that, but it is. I think this is an industry where obviously have to love it. This is not a 9 to 5 job. This is not a kind of hey, I could get up in the morning and I could and by the time I get home I could put it all away. It is I'll be honest, it's an all-encompassing. It takes up your whole uh, all of your time in a good way, though I would say, because there are obviously tough days and there are a lot of you know, pressure and creative decisions you have to make. But what I love about this job is that at the end of the day, when there is quietness, you could kind of just breathe out and go, whew, what a ride. That was so exciting. Who knows what the next day, tomorrow is going to be in store. And I think that's part of the excitement. There's no one day that's going to be the same. And it's hard. I will say it's hard. It is a lot of time commitment, especially when you're just starting, because there's so much to learn, and you want to learn it all, and you want to experience it all, but it takes time, and it's just how much I think. It just how much are you willing to give for the experience, and to live up the experience. So it's a lot of juggling. obviously self-care is always an issue. Time to yourself is always going to be a battle in this industry. I think it's always going to be a give and take. Um, but I hope at the end of the day, people can find that balance. But it's also, I think it's also tough to find that balance for you as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, I don't know how I did it. I honestly don't know, other than living through it, other than, hey, things have to get done, other than worrying about, you know, these are things that we have to do, we have to achieve in order to, you know, keep going, in order to have a job, in order to make your projects come true. Yeah, so you know, I don't think there's a good answer. You just do it. I'll be honest with you. You just do it, and if you kind of let all the frustrations, if you just let it go, if you just allow it to be there and just live with it, and not let it affect you, and just accept it that, hey, it's going to be a bumpy road. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be tough. You're going to have bad days. Um, and really enjoy the good days too. You know, it all evens out. So, um, yeah. So it's a journey and it's a ride. So, but worth it. Very worth it.
It has to be, right? Like it's
I
it's it's what we're
I
dedicating
hope so.
life
It has to be.
to.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it worth it.
Exactly.
But you mentioned as far as like the good days with the bad and needing to find time for yourself. What are some of the self care tactics that you use to stay sane while you're doing everything?
It's a great question. I think it's really. I think it starts with really knowing who you are. You know, I'm a person who I enjoy being alone. Um, Obviously, I enjoy being collaborative and working with, you know, networks and studios and working with a large team. But I do know that I need the times that I am just by myself. So it's about finding those times, you know, whether it's in the car, whether it's driving, whether it's at home, you know. In those times by myself, I think is the most necessary that I need. So it's really, and by the way, I've learned this throughout my journey that I didn't realize that's what I needed, you know, and so I slowly started to understand that, oh my God, I could get so stressed out that I couldn't sleep or anything or eat. Sometimes I couldn't eat. You know, I just need some time, quiet time by myself, whether it's listening to music or just thinking, just letting the thoughts come through my head and just relaxing and letting my shoulders down. So it was a little bit of also, you know, learning about what works for me. Um, something that, and again, I'll share something that works. Just it could be just for me. And I'd like to be in situations where I like to go places where nobody knows who I am, and and just see if I can fit in. It's a weird thing, but it for some reason it's soothing to me because there's no expectations, there's no um, you know, pressure. I could just be a person in the crowd, just with everyone else. I think it's also helped me not to get too big headed a little bit. You know that everyone's important, and I discovered this really because when I go home and see my friends, nobody cares about what I do, right? When I first started in this industry, when I go home, I'm telling them everything that's going on, and they don't care. And there's something great about that.
Yeah.
It's something I miss. I don't have to talk about this industry all the time. So whenever I could go to places or events that not industry related, for me, those are wonderful.
I hear that. I
Uh,
really like what you were saying as far as the no expectations.
yeah.
No one's expecting anything. You can just be and exist. That is such a big deal to be able to like find the space to do that. So you're saying for you that's like going home. It's not like going to like Disney World or like out to eat by yourself. It's
Yeah, it's going to, you know, in LA, and obviously it doesn't exist in the pandemic now, but in LA, there were a few years ago, uh, there were events that, again, it brought people together. I think you pay a little bit of money and then you just either they talk about music, they talk about every different kind of. I think it was called Mindshare or something like that. It just brought different people from different industries together and they share what they have to talk. They share what they have to say. Kind of like TED Talks, but it was a little bit more intimate. It's not like watching over the internet or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So and those were something I enjoyed. I didn't invite any of my friends or work friends. It's something I just did on my own, and I'm gonna tell you, it was thrilling and it was very soothing at the same time. So
I like that because sometimes work can be a lot, and you do need that
working me
time.
well.
You know,
Yeah.
when you are working, and you talked about how, especially when you're starting out, there's a lot of demands on your time, and being able to figure out how much time to dedicate when you're either at work or when you're trying to find time. I'm sorry, this question got a little convoluted, huh?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Keep going.
I was like, what is happening? But whenever you're starting out and you're putting in all those hours and you're working really really hard, how are you navigating rising through the ranks while still being a sane person, or at least how did you do
Um, it's a great question. I think I got lucky, to be quite honest with you. It was because of the people I worked for. Yeah, it had to do. Number one, it had to do with who you are. I'll be, when I first went to ABC Family, I really enjoyed the people I worked under, who I worked for, but they were. I just knew I wasn't in the same um, I don't know, same grouping, meaning that they were the ABC Family was starting as it was just a new network. It was a lot about what teens were going through, a lot about what social media and what's going on in the gossip world. It was I just knew it wasn't me. It was the executives love to talk about that, and it wasn't what I was interested in. And there's nothing against the executives, and I love the way they were talking. I was just absorbing, but I knew I could not really participate in the conversation. I felt as lovely as they were, and as lovely as I loved working with them, it just didn't really connect. But when I went to CBS, I worked for two executives who were extremely hardworking, extremely kind, um, and extremely thoughtful. And I knew that's who I was, and that those are the people that for the first time I realized, oh, you could be a really good person and be smart and be creative, right? Coming from the agencies, you're getting screamed at and yelled at, and I know I don't want to be that person, right? So I think I got kind of lucky because working at CBS and working for at the time it was two bosses, there were two heads of the department. They were great. I often wonder if I worked for another division that was a little bit more cutthroat, that was a little bit less friendly and more uh, played more politics. I don't know if I could have ended up the way I did. I may have bought into that culture, but I think just knowing that the person who I am and finding my group and the culture that they believe in, which is similar to my culture, I got kind of lucky when I started as an assistant
that?
in development. So and I think that's how I was able to maintain it. It's definitely possible. It's just knowing who you are and finding the right people, finding your group.
That kind of relates to the next two questions I have because we're actually close to the time. I didn't even realize.
Oh wow!
Isn't that so wild? So if you could like quickly answer for me, you talked about the people that you're working with, right? So like how mentors have affected your working relationship and your career development.
Yeah, they've been so instrumental. These mentors are people who I worked for and building that relationship and trust. And even though I don't work for them, and obviously they've moved on to other things, I've moved on to other things. They are people that I still go to for advice. They've experienced more, so it's so easy for me to email them or call them and just, I need, I'm in this situation or have this project. What do you think? Uh, and because we do have this a genuine friendship, their insights is so invaluable in not just insights, but they also help me realize, okay, the stuff I'm seeing, hey, I'm not crazy. They understand that, no, you're right. What you're feeling is valid. And because they've been through it before, most likely, what they've learned. So the mentorship has been, I think that's what I get most of for mentorship, not just the relationship, but the continued education that they offer.
Which is super important, which I'm sure you know I value since you're one of my
Yeah.
mentors.
So, yes, I and striving to give you that education as well, or that advice. So
Yes. And lastly, can you tell us what is the one question that no one asked you that you wish everyone should?
um, I think it's hard about questions to ask me. I think the question that people should be asking, especially I think creators and writers, is, I think nowadays, is what is your voice, right? I think, and for the incubator, this is something that we focus on. Having a discussion of whether it's executives or upcoming writers, your voice is what the industry is looking for. But what does voice mean? And I think that is a good conversation to have. Voice doesn't just mean what you write on the paper and how funny you are and how well you can describe a scene. It's really your experience and in the mission statements that you want to make and the social statements that you want to make, and how your vulnerabilities can be talked can be put through a story that audiences could get a deeper sense of who you are and where you're coming from, because everyone's experiences are so different. If we could see it through your lens, that's the voice that I think everyone's looking for. I think I've met a lot of young writers or executives looking for things that would fit in a box. And with streaming and with streaming going global and more audiences looking for more diverse content, that voice is much more valued than I think 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the one thing I would encourage people to either ask me or talk about with other executives, with other writers, or think about themselves when they're writing or they're developing is, what's the voice I'm bringing? What's my experience? What's my vulnerabilities? What's the mission statement I want to bring, and how to, and knowing that, how to tell that through the story that I want to tell.
That's a great note right there. That's a great note to end on. I didn't even know. I fully am going to start doing that.
It's a constant thing to think. It's not like you just come up with an answer and you're done. It's a lifelong question.
Yeah.
It's stuff that I still ask to this day. What makes me respond to this material? And also on the flip side, why don't I respond to this material?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lifelong kind of thing, but it's worthwhile to think about.
Yeah, knowing your voice and knowing what message you want out there and what you stand for. I think that's what we're all here to do anyways, to be heard in entertainment. Yes. So I think that's fabulous. Well, Wei, thank you so much for, giving us your time on a Saturday. So spending this time and, speaking with me, speaking with our audience, and sharing your know-how. Definitely really appreciate it on a personal level, appreciate it on behalf of Greater Film Festival and Networking for Career Filmmakers. I hope this was an enjoyable experience for you.
It was.
Okay.
So,
great.
Thank you very much.
I'm so excited.
I always love chatting with you, Aiden. So
thanks, me too.
We'll chat soon. We'll chat soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just thank you so much. And this was fantastic.
No worries. Thank you.
All right.
Happy to be here. Happy to talk. All right. Bye.